New construction is challenging. Remodeling is harder, but correcting an unlicensed contractor's shoddy work is harder yet. Hi, I'm Frost from Hoodwinked House. In this episode, we're recovering from more predatory remodeling. Today we're going to continue boxing in our kitchen vent stack and redoing the wiring for these pendant lights, including replacing this switch box. Now if you look at the wiring as it goes up to the top, it is sandwiched between some framing and drywall incorrectly. That should be going through the framing with a drilled hole. So that's up in the attic someplace, and we're going to have to take a look at that. So to get access to that, we really ought to remove this sheet of drywall. So we should get going on that demolition. Let's get started. So we're going to start by cutting power to those pendant lights, and apparently this room. Like so. That should be loose in here now. Just like that. Now I'm going to try to preserve this face of the column, so I'm going to score here in order to remove this drywall. Try to do this carefully as I can. Here comes the fun part. So with our demolition complete, here's our vent stack, and we can get a better look at what's going on with the electrical. I don't know, guys, that does not look code or properly done to me. I'm not looking forward to whatever's going on at the other end of these wires. Let's get up in the attic and take a look. I'm up in the attic and I'm taking a look at this vent stack here from the kitchen. This is the one that comes up through the ceiling and continues on up to the roof. Now, those electrical wires for those pendant lights, from the drywall's perspective, would be somewhere right about here. But I'm looking at the junction box for that pendant that's close by here, and I'm just going to try to follow the wiring back to its source, to where the switch is. It looks like this one goes under this truss here. So I can take a look and, oh boy, we got a splice that has no junction box again. Alright, so after a bit more investigation, we know that we've got a splice that's right about here. That's going to need a junction box, and the wires seem to be fixed and stapled to the back of kind of a nailer plate that I can't really get to from this side. So really all we need to do, these aren't going anywhere, they're nice and secure, so what we really need to do is make them come through the middle of this top plate. So I'm going to drill a hole right here, we're going to fish these wires through the top, and then we'll be able to frame it back up. Alright, the power's out. I'm working on installing a junction box here at this splice. I hate working in the dark. So the flipper who sold us the house didn't bother to use junction boxes when he installed these pendant lights, so I went ahead and put one in and attached it to these trusses. So now I'm just going to go ahead and button it up with this cover. Dead battery. Great. There we go. Alright, I temporarily capped off the power so we can switch the breaker back on and use it for our tools. Previously, when I demolished the column, there was only an outside corner bead and a scab that was holding the drywall together. So I'm going to replace that with a proper 2x4 frame, and we're going to connect that with a couple of metal brackets that we can attach to the framing at the top and the bottom. They're a little bit too deep, so they'll need to be cut down. So let's go ahead and do that. Great, so with our framing installed, all we have to do now is disconnect the power, take off these caps, fish the wires through our switch box, rewire the switch, and voila, we should be good to go. Alright, so we'll flip on the power. Fingers crossed. Oh, so far so good. Well, let's see what we got. Hey! Alright, well that takes care of one problem. Let's keep going on framing around this vent stack. One of the problems with remodeling is trying to decide what to keep and what to discard. In this case, I need to put down a base plate that's going to be part of the framing that goes around our vent stack here. So that base plate has got to be deep enough to allow some vertical framing that's going to sit like this against our vent stack. And then also it's going to have a sheet of drywall on it, which is a 1/2 inch thick. So I need to cut away some of this laminate flooring for that base plate to go down. I'm thinking that this seam here might be a good place to just leave it as a natural cut. And then being that the wall starts here, I can probably just continue that line right there and just cut along here and remove this piece of laminate. And we'll just pop off this corner molding so we can reuse it later on. Just as gently as I can. Looks like these were just pin nailed on. Great. And now we'll pop out this piece of laminate. There it goes. Great. So with just a little bit of cleanup, you can see we got a nice surface for us to mount our base plate to for our framing. That framing is going to have to be just as wide as the rest of this box, which looks like it's just about 6 3/4 wide. Now what I could do is take a couple of 2x4s and frame them in side by side, but they would be pretty much adjacent to each other, and that seems kind of ridiculous. So I think I'm going to just use a single piece of timber here, and being that a 2x8 almost fits the bill. Its actual size is closer to 1.5 by 7. So I think we can just rip that down and have just a single piece of timber here to continue boxing in our vent stack. So let's go ahead and rip that 2x8 down. Using our 2x8 that's been ripped down to 6 3/4 wide, I fabricated a plate that fits exactly around this PVC vent stack. I've cut an additional one for the top plate. This will be enough framing for us to take care of 3 corners of our column, but we also need to be able to attach drywall to this face, so I'm going to add this 2x2 furring strip on here as well. Okay. Perfect, just like that. Let's lock it down. Great, well that takes care of our framing. Let's get some drywall on this guy. Applying the initial layer of drywall mud is the last thing we'll be able to accomplish today. So even though we've done a bunch of the carpentry work ourselves, correcting this kitchen vent stack problem has cost almost $1,000, all thanks to one shady real estate flipper. Who knows what other problems we'll find thanks to Predatory Remodeling. I'm Frost. Thanks for watching. You can continue following our story on hoodwinkedhouse.com.